I'm so happy to introduce you to Jason Lavender. Jason is the co-founder of Electives, which is a online learning and development platform, which I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, um, can serve like almost all of your learning and development needs if you are interested in corporate training, which I hope all of you B2Bs are, or just like general corporations are needing. And I have been lucky to be an instructor with Electives for a few years, and I will say the participants are eager, enthusiastic, and lovely. And the team at Electives is wonderful to partner with. But Jason also has a wonderful background. You have business development, you've co-founded companies, you have a consulting background. What else would you add to that?
Yeah, it's been funny. It's been kind of a windy path. I started as an actuary and, currently an entrepreneur,
Oh,
which I feel like you don't hear the actuary to entrepreneur too
no,
often.
never.
But I think that's a good thing. It's a lot of different perspectives, a lot of different lenses, got to work with a bunch of different people in different industries. So, you never know what the next decade will look like, but certainly the first 15 years have been windy in multiple industries. Um, I don't think I would add much else, at least from a business perspective. I think that covered it perfectly.
I've been inspired by how Electives has grown. I've seen other people try to do something like this, but I think what you've done is you've hit on something that I think is really valuable, and I'm proud to be a part of it. So that's part of the reason I wanted to talk to you was like from your leadership role as the co-founder of Electives, but also as a human being who's the person behind Electives. That's what I'm hoping to get to here. And as I tell all of the people I'm interviewing, like this is really about, I would love to demonstrate what connection looks like, what authenticity looks like, what vulnerability, what storytelling looks like. And it looks like so many, it's so diverse and there's such range in there. So are you ready to go there?
Yeah, I'm excited.
All right. So um, as you know, these questions, as you already saw, like you said that they're kind of meaty. Because I really like to go beneath the surface in these conversations because I think that's where real wisdom lies. I like to leave people with more questions than answers. So are you ready to go there?
I am ready. Yeah, I think
Okay,
I feel like we don't go there enough. So this is a good jolt for us today.
awesome. That's how I feel too. So on that note, you may already know this about me. My philosophy is that everybody is a leader, whether your title affords you leadership capacity or not, or it's in your people, you don't have the scope or you do. I just think that everyone walks around the world as a leader, meaning that you influence others whether you like it or not. People are watching you, learning from you, being touched by things you say and do. So you're obviously a leader. How would you describe yourself as a leader? What kind of leader are you?
I think it continues to evolve. And I would totally agree with your point that I also echo that everybody's a leader. I think to answer that question, it's almost easier for me to know what kind of leader I'm not. Uh,
Mm.
I'm not I'm not the most vocal leader. I'm certainly not a like rah rah, like loud voice at the room, loud voice in any room type of leader. I think I'm more of a kind of empathetic listener, and I like to try to lead by action over words. There are moments and times when words are the most important, but I think of in general, people typically kind of look to me to see what is Jason going to do versus what is Jason going to say. And I think that has just kind of embodied so much of how I think about leadership. The other thing that I always think about is I'm actually just reading the book The Infinite Game right now by Simon Sinek, and I feel like I've heard of all of Simon Sinek's books except that one.
I know,
Uh,
yeah.
but I'm only like a fifth of the way through. But there's so much of the like play the long game, play the infinite game in life that um, I think that also embodies how I think about leadership. Of nothing in life is transactional, and so there's no finite ending to these relationships, and we should always be thinking in that kind of infinite lens.
Okay, so you're reminding me when I first met you, you also did this. Like you dropped a reference that I was like, oh, I'm gonna follow up with that. And it was so helpful for me. And I built an impression of you that you're a learner, that you're someone who lives by learning. And so as you think about your journey as a leader, how aware are you of um, your path, your role as a leader, your responsibility as a leader, and your impact as a leader?
So you're spot on in terms of the learner side of things, and I think unlearning is sometimes harder than learning. So I always feel like there's more to learn every day. Um, I would say from an awareness perspective, to your opening point, I think um, it was easier for me to lead in prior companies when I didn't have the either co-founder or CEO title. I think there was kind of less eyeballs on me and I could kind of lead quietly, which is more natural for me. I've had to be reminded in several instances of like people are looking to you. People are looking to my co-founders in terms of whatever the case may be, whether there's a big celebration happening at the company, how are we reacting? Or I always think back to last March when Silicon Valley Bank crashed. That was kind of one of the moments of panic, and they're also looking at us in terms of how are we reacting to that. So I would say I had to be, and I still have to be, reminded pretty consistently that people are looking to me for leadership. There's just something that I kind of default to, like, no, I'm still that person in my mid-20s, and like I'm just going to kind of be the way I am. And it's really helpful to have peers and mentors kind of remind you and say like people are looking at you for answers, confidence, and to make sure that everybody's feeling good.
Yeah, so there's that piece, right? Here's what people are looking at you, trying to get from you. But I think there's also the piece that you get to define and create, which is how do you want to be known? How would you answer that question?
That's a good question, and I will try to not get emotional sharing this, but one of my mentors actually just passed away this morning, and I was reflecting. I was driving my wife into work, and I was reflecting on like how impactful he was to me. Uh, and on the drive home, I started to have a kind of what first felt like a counterproductive thought of like I actually didn't spend that much time with him.
Mm.
And so I started to reflect. I was like, there's probably thousands of people this morning who are saying, one of my mentors just passed away. And that started to kind of cause this reflection of it wasn't about the quantity of time spent with this particular person. The quality of time was just so good that he touched so many people in really, really impactful ways. And so, yeah, it's just kind of it's recent. It's a recent loss, but in terms of how I would want to be remembered, it's in that similar vein of like the time spent was valuable.
Mhm.
It was authentic. Again, it wasn't transactional. But even if you spend an hour with someone, if you think of them as a mentor that quickly, like what a powerful, relationship that you've already created.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to think about that, of course. So we've talked about what kind of leader you are. You've talked about how you want to be known. The flip side of that is, you know, this is one question that people love hearing the answer to, which is, what do most people get wrong about you?
Yeah. I think two things come to mind. One is more recent, and one I've kind of learned over the last decade plus. So the recent one that I think people get wrong quite a bit is I think people assume that I have more plans than I actually do. Like I think,
Oh, that's good. Yeah,
yeah,
that's good.
I think people see me and they're like, you wanted to do consulting for 10 years, then you wanted to go to MIT for business school, and then you wanted to start a company. And like none of those things were on my roadmap. Even a month before I applied for business school wasn't on my roadmap. A month before starting electives wasn't on my roadmap. Like there's just so much stuff that is not planned for. And I think because I started my career as an actuary, there's probably this lens of like very risk averse, doesn't take
Mm.
chances. Um, and both couldn't be further from the truth. Like I just, I try to stay as open-minded as possible and not have a plan, whether it's for the next quarter or for the next year, because I want things to come in and change my perspective, change my decision making. So the whole concept of like having a plan and having a script and kind of like going for it just couldn't be more wrong. The other thing that came to mind, which I haven't thought about in years, but I remember growing up, like high school, college, everyone would always say, "Jason's so lucky. Jason's so lucky," and I kind of just believed it. You know, you hear it enough times where this term lavender luck started coming into play, and I was like, yeah, just lavender luck. Like I would, you know, get pulled over for speeding but not get a ticket,
Oh my
or
gosh.
like
Yeah.
all of these things would happen. And I remember a moment right after undergrad graduation. Uh, a close friend of mine's parents were catching up with my parents, and my friend and I were just kind of talking off to the side. And I had landed this job as an actuary at a consulting firm. And my friend's parent said to my mom, like, "Oh, Jason's so lucky." And my mom just like very sternly, which was kind of out of her character, was like, "It's not luck." And it kind of like I was still trying to talk with my friend, but I heard it and I was reflecting afterwards. We were driving home together, and she was like, "You do need to put yourself in situations where things can happen." And I always remember that because there are times where, you know, there is luck, there is privilege, there's all those things, and I think I had to be kind of pushed by my mom in that example of like, you got to put yourself out there too. You have to kind of make your own luck. Um, and so that always stood out to me as well of like, you know, sometimes you got to take the shot to even get the chance. And so I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but it's been in the back of my mind lately.
That's a good one because luck is, I agree. I think it can be quite dismissive of our intentions and our efforts to yield a certain outcome. And to reduce all of that to luck feels like, you know, dismissive or minimizing in some way. So I love that your mom did that. I love that you heard that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just saw a video. This is all kind of like coming full circle, but one of our sessions on Friday, actually, the instructor showed. Have you ever seen this video of fleas in a glass jar?
I can think of many videos with that. I don't know. That's such a
Okay.
random thing.
Yeah, it's only like 30 seconds, so I didn't know if it was like a famous, you know.
Okay. Yeah,
uh,
I've seen one of those. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So the lesson that the scientist was sharing was the scientist put these fleas in a jar, put a lid on the jar for 3 days, and then opens the jar, and the fleas are basically like trained. They don't ever try to jump out of the jar because the lid was on. And then they start producing offspring. The offspring never tries to leave the jar. Like everybody is kind of constrained by this 3 day lid. Um, and it made me think of like the first kind of 5 to 10 years of my career, how many mentors I had that without ever having words to put on it, just kept taking the lid off like everything that I worked on. Like they would tell you, like, you don't have a ceiling here. Like, what are you going to do next? You're probably going to leave the company. And like those little comments just kept taking the lid off. And I think you just need people literally telling you, like, you don't
Yeah,
have a,
reminding.
you don't have a,
Yeah.
et cetera.
Yeah, like you don't even know that you're confining yourself. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. I want to back up a minute about this, what seems like a planful linear path, and it's actually not. So I love that because I think we don't often have the platform to tell people about our decisions and our intentions around how this career developed, and people will make all sorts of assumptions, and will impose or project logic onto it, and they might have gotten completely wrong, and then inadvertently get a playbook that they try to follow and then not actually get the same yield, right? So how would you describe your path? If it's not logical, linear, planful, how was it?
Yeah, I think there was, and I'm kind of strictly just thinking from a career perspective, but I think both came back from a decision making perspective at different forks in the road. The kind of either like mission or ability to make an impact was the part that shifted me. So when I was in consulting, I remember I was there 10 plus years. I got promoted to partner, which at the time was like, that was the dream, you know, like everyone who started out of school was like, how do I get to partner? And I've told the story in the past where they threw a party for me in the Boston office to congratulate me. And I was the only one who wasn't super excited. Like everyone was like toasting champagne. And there was just something inside of me that was like, is this what I've been like chasing over the last 10 years? And I just kind of felt like my learning had flatlined. I didn't feel like I was making the impact that I kind of perceived that I would in the earlier days. So it was like a super easy decision for me to just say like I've kind of stopped developing. It's time for me to move on. It wasn't a financial decision. It wasn't a people decision. Like it was just, I could feel that internally. And then it was different, but when I was at a healthcare startup, I ended up leaving and I kind of took a step back. And it was similar in the sense that I stopped learning, but there was this kind of like nugget of an idea for electives. And there was just part of me that was like, even if we try this for a year, what's the worst thing that happened? Thousands of people take classes from interesting people, and like, we couldn't sustain the business, but a ton of people learn. Like, that's not a bad thing.
It's such a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like I just had to kind of frame it as that.
Yeah.
But I think there are, to your point, like there's playbooks of like, raise venture dollars and like have a big exit. And none of those things are ever top of mind for me. It was like we raised venture dollars because we needed to hire people to help more people learn. But the incentives all along have been, how do we get more people learning every day? And if we focus on that, all kinds of other good things will come out of it.
I love it. I mean, what I'm getting from you is like the investment of a healthy attitude or mindset or psychology, right? So like I remember you told me that when we met at Epic Coffee here in Austin, and you said like, what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is thousands of people learn something and we fade out or something like that. And I thought, well, that's your worst case, right? Like many people would have a very different worst case scenario. We actually crash and burn and cause harm or something. That wasn't part of your worst case scenario. Your worst case scenario actually seemed palatable and positive.
Yeah. Yeah. It totally was. And I think there's a balance there, because I think you need to, as the team grows, all of a sudden the worst case scenario starts to grow in the sense of now people are depending on you for compensation and benefits. And so
Right.
now you have to kind of make this even more sustainable than you originally had from a worst case perspective. But I still think as we kind of do scenario planning, again, quarter over quarter or year over year, our worst case still feels like a good outcome in the long
Yeah,
run.
I agree. I agree. Okay, so my next question is really about given this path, right, and how you've trusted your nervous system, your instincts, you've trusted the inner voice, which, by the way, thanks for giving permission to do that, because I think it's really scary to do that, especially when everyone else is telling you to do something different.
Yep.
What commitments have you made that you no longer believe in? And when I say commitments, I really mean values, beliefs, ideas. Like, what kinds of things have you been committed to in the past that you're like, no, I don't believe in that anymore?
It's a good one. I think because I don't have a huge plan, I don't have a ton of huge commitments, but the thing that comes to mind is um, uh, living in different places. And the reason I share that is so I've grown up in Boston. I went to BC. I went to MIT. Like I've never lived outside of a 10-mile radius. And I think I had a over the top kind of loyalty to Boston. And I think my family's here, my friends are here. I love it here. Like I enjoy living here. But I just think that commitment to kind of a geography has started to fade in a good way. And there's just so many other places in the world that I would enjoy living in, and I just think are
Oh,
rich with like new cultures, new restaurants, new environments, new friends. That 10 years ago I would have been like, nope, nope, I'm a Boston guy. I'm never
yeah,
leaving. And I think that that commitment just doesn't feel as strong. And I still think the family connection can be strong, even stronger potentially if you're not
totally.
geographic. So
That's really good. I'm smiling because I was like, I think I had the opposite, meaning I grew up living all around the world and really always was committed to having that and building that with my kids. And now I've been in Austin now for, 11 years. And there's a part of me that is like disappointed that we didn't create that. But I'm also like, but I love it here. Like I have a new commitment to this place of like rooting ourselves here and truly building a long-term sustainable community here, the way you have in Boston, and feeling newly committed to that.
yeah, yeah, I love that too. And I think even as I say it, I'm like, I feel like I could live in other cities for like a year, 18 months, and like
Yeah.
kind of like there'll be that magnet that pulls you back. You never know. But it's evolved for sure relative to where I
Hmm.
was a decade
Hmm.
ago.
I like that. Okay. Um, who or what do you feel most grateful to have in your life?
That's a good question. It's really hard to pick one. I'm going to go person. I think people, I'm definitely most grateful for people in general. Um, I think if I think about it, like I am incredibly grateful to have two super healthy and supportive parents, two really supportive older sisters who growing up were like third and fourth moms to me.
Mm.
Uh, I do think if I had to pick one person kind of right now, I would pick my partner Tracy. And I think the reason is like family, my parents and my sisters are always there for me. If I call, if I need something, I was just at the beach on Sunday with my sister, just catching up. I do think there's an element just kind of in my life stage right now that my family kind of gets all the positive things. It's like, we're seeing each other at a barbecue, we're seeing each other at holidays, like they're getting all the joy. Tracy is seeing every single part of
All of
me over
it.
the last
Yeah.
couple of years. And the stressful, midnight nights staying up late, the cranky mornings of like, stress and all of those things. And I think I've just learned so much from her, both personally and professionally. And I think, I don't know, right now, as times get tougher, I think she sees all of that and is incredibly supportive. And yeah, I'm just super grateful for that and that trust.
I ask this question over and over and over, and people's answers are either their partner or their kids every single time, and yet we love hearing it. And I think it's because it like really humanizes us to be like, okay, I'm doing all this work in the world, service-oriented work, and I'm changing the world. And when it really comes down to it, the thing that brings me the greatest fulfillment and that is reciprocal and fulfilling and all that rich and is the people. And it's my partner or it's my kids or it's both, right? So you're not alone in that.
Yeah, I guess the other reflection is it's good to have a lot of options to pick through.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for that alone.
Yeah. And okay, so now as you think about how many years in are you with electives?
About 3.5.
Wow. Okay, so 3.5 years into electives, you have this, this rich career behind you, and you have so much ahead of you. But also beyond career and your personal life, obviously, you have like a really nicely insulated social network in Boston. And what crossroads are you at this point in your life?
I think the crossroads that I'm starting to feel, and it feels almost more of like a slight fork in the road than a true crossroad. But I do think I think as a founder, and I'm sure you've gone through the same feeling, is like I pour 120% into everything electives. And in the back of my head, there's just this question of like, if I'm doing that consistently, other places in my life are getting less than 100%. And so I've just been a little bit more cognizant, I would say, of like where are there opportunities that I can pour more into things outside of electives without, you know, impacting the trajectory of the company in any way. But I think in those first 3.5 years, it's like, and in the next 3 years, to be honest, it's like survival mode. It's like, how do we move super
Yep.
fast? How do we make, decisions really quickly? And it's really just all encompassing. And so the like slight crossroads I'm in is just what other things can I be doing outside of electives
Yeah.
that helps me as an individual? And so last October, I joined the board of a nonprofit in Boston. It's only been a few hours a month, but it's like totally filling my cup. I love what the organization is doing. And I think I'm just asking myself more those types of questions of we just planned Iceland for Labor Day. And it's like, what are those other things that I can just take a little bit out of the 110%? And not impact the business, but just do a little self-care and make sure
Yeah.
the other parts of my life are feeling that same kind of filling of the cup.
Yeah, I love that. I think about like a certain archetype of leader who is like really service oriented and really wants to do good in the world. I think you're like that. And I'm always like okay, we want more of you. Yes, like, but don't spread yourself too thin, right? Just like, how can you sort of balance all the things knowing that so many people want you and the gifts that you bring to the world, and how do you decide which cups you're going to fill and which where you to spend your time and attention? It's like a constant crossroads.
It totally is. The visual that has helped me a lot actually in the last couple of years is, so one of our instructors he was the former CEO of Panera. He taught this whole class on like empathetic leadership, and he had everyone basically write the important things in their life in a circle. So it could be your kids, your like you're a son to somebody, you're an entrepreneur to somebody. So I'm writing down all my kind of different personas. And then he said, imagine spokes on a wheel that connect to those different identities. And if you just visualize 1 to 10, how much effort you're kind of investing in that kind of persona, draw a line that far out. And not surprisingly, there were some that went out to 10, and then there were some that went out to 2. And it kind of created this like really jaggedy looking wheel. And his lesson was like, that wheel of life is not going to roll very far. Like it's actually going to go nowhere. And so I always picture that because, yeah, you have the best intentions to be a 10 everywhere, but that's just not realistic. It's,
Impossible.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think doing 5s or 6s in a lot of places is a good thing.
Can be super fulfilling. Yes. All right. So I always end the interview on this question, and it's meant to be lighthearted, but some people go real deep with this, some people keep it light. It's really up to you. What's a semi big decision that you have to make this month?
Ooh, semi big decision. I think my gut reaction is to go light. I think I just mentioned Iceland.
Yeah.
It's my to-do list is like figure out what we're doing in Iceland. So
Yeah.
Tracy booked the flights and she's like, let's just get it on the books and like let's have it there. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna start kind of figuring out where to go. And I have not done that yet. So I keep telling people, I'm like, yeah, we're going to Iceland. They're like, oh, what are you gonna do? And we're like, we don't even have a hotel. So the semi big decision is just plan a vacation, which feels not super big, but I think if you plan it super thoughtfully and well, it'll turn into an amazing experience. So
Yeah.
uh, that's kind of the big decision. I'm sure there's others that I'm missing, but that's the most
No,
top of
I
mind.
think that's a really good one. When you think about like, okay, if I think about this as a logistical decision, it's like not a big one, but maybe this could affect our whole lives, right? Like what we do in Iceland could be very memorable forever.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
well, what like I didn't realize I was going to learn this much about you, and you've been so honest and candid and open, and I really appreciate it. Is there anything else you'd like to say to round out your comments from today?
I don't think so. I mean, one, just thank you, Priya. I think as we said at the beginning, these are questions that you don't typically think of and stop and reflect. And so I mentioned it was kind of timely to have this reflection of kind of a loss in my life. And so today has just been an interesting one of like self-reflection, mentor reflection. I don't know. I feel like dinner tonight will just be a little bit more philosophical, I think, in
Yeah.
terms of this conversation, which it's a good thing. It's a good reminder to do this more often.
Awesome. Well, as usual, I know you're very busy, and I really appreciate your time and the chance to connect with you like this.
Thanks so much for having me, Priya.